Alright, alright, it's time. Hey again, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of the No Name Podcast. Currently, we don't have a name like I said last week, but you know what I'm saying. We right around the corner. Back again, my boy Dre. AJ is out this week. He's not feeling well, so prayers up to him. It's nothing serious. He probably, you know what I'm saying, ordered from the wrong Caribbean food this time. But you know he'll bounce back. He'll be just fine, man. Dre, you are. Oh, let me mute my goddamn Apple. Uh, close that. But Dre, how you doing, man? Yeah, you know what I'm saying. I ain't talked to you in a good little week. You know what I'm saying. You was doing something last week at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday. I'm just checking on some, make sure you healthy and all that good thing. How you feeling, bro?
I'm good, man. It's another Tuesday in the Pop Talk some Washington football team. Football. I'm about to say the Redskins. I don't know why,
It's perfectly fine. Look at the platform we on. It's perfectly fine. Say it. Get it off your
right.
chest, my brother.
I try to weed myself from saying it just because I want to get used to saying something else, so I don't get attached to the name like some folks do.
Well, now that's completely reasonable, but I feel like so is it like a priority, like in the respect of Washington football, like that circle, is that a priority, like to try and make sure you don't say the name, or is just like if it happens, it happens?
Well, for me, I try to make it a priority because I know if I keep saying Redskins, I'll never get used to whatever the new name is. It was kind of like the Wizards Bullets thing. I lived through that, even though I still to this day prefer the Bullets name, but I couldn't call them the Bullets. But I remember like the OGs and stuff back in the day, they would still call them the Bullets years and years after. They'd be like, oh, they always gonna be the Bullets to me. So,
Hey,
I don't want to be that.
so help me out with that, man. Now when I obviously you the OG, man. I'm a little bit younger than you. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah, I'll take
help
that.
me out with this Bullets thing. Like I understand. Like I personally liked the name when I was younger and growing up. But I seen it in 2K. Clearly, when I became aware of sports in general, it was the Wizards. Like that's all I knew. So when the Wizards changed their name and changed their identity, like you were here, like how serious was it in terms of people getting attached to a name and the name changing?
Well, the thing is, a lot of I guess the original Bullets fans, they didn't like. No one liked it. No people protested and hated the Wizards for years. I mean, I remember that being a thing. But the fortunate thing for, I guess, management and Bullets with this front office is that this area doesn't care about them as much as they do the football team. So they would never get the big outrage that this has gotten with this name change has. Whereas a lot of people just eventually swept it under the rug, and we don't have no big tradition as no, I mean, the Wizards aren't
Yes.
like the Lakers or the Celtics or anything like that. Whereas the Redskins is more historically, propelled into the league that they are in, versus the Bullets. So it's a lot different reaction. But like I said, the hardcore people, they were pissed for a while.
Man, look, all I can say is because in my experience, I only been through one name change. This shit does not bother me as much as I would have imagined it to bother me. Like when the time came for it's always been a discussion in years past, but when the time actually came last year, I was like, bro, I shoulder shrug. Like it is what it is at this point. A lot of people ask me too, like, what's like how you feel about this shit? I'm like, I don't even know how I'm supposed to feel. I don't know. Like
Right,
how am I supposed to tell somebody that I'm upset or I'm happy? Like that's not something that's in me. Like the team, as long as I've known, has been losing for some time. And I hate to start show off like this. I'm sorry. Like you know what I'm saying? We ain't been that good for a long time, okay? But that's the driving force of everything behind how I feel about the team. Like we haven't been winning, so what can I really be attached to? Of course, this is my team, and I have my memories
right.
with the team. But in terms of branding, that's just one aspect. I can get over that shit. I'll
Yeah,
be
yeah.
perfectly fine, man. All right. But yeah, Drake. So yeah, I take it everything been good with you, man. Your weekend was straight. Your dog's healthy, all that good stuff.
Everything was great, man. Like I had a great weekend with family. Did outings with the dog like we always do, and just try to keep my ear plugged in on the Nationals. Watch them whenever they on. Them sorry Wizards. I watch them.
I
I'm
don't know how
keeping
you do
into
it. I
the.
don't know how you do it, man. I just
They
can't.
background noise, man.
Background noise. Okay, I respect that. I really do respect that. I get it. Okay, so yeah, like for me, I feel like now I gotta ask anybody who's watching live and you too. Have you ever ran into a janky salesman? It doesn't even matter like to what degree. It doesn't matter. Like I ran into a janky salesman, and what day was it? It was Sunday, and it wasn't even. It was a car salesman. It wasn't even my car, or the interest wasn't even pertaining to me. It was my girlfriend, and she was out shopping for a car, and her dad was helping her during like while we were attending an event for my mother. He was out there doing the legwork, just trying to get like finagle some deals and things like that. Long story short, he went to 2 dealerships prior to this one dealership that he went to on Sunday. He checked in on Sunday with that dealership at noon. We don't get there. He's well aware that where we were at, so it's fine, but we don't get there until like 5. So he's there for a while, just making sure everything is in place, bro. Everything is in place. We get there at 5. She test drives the car. She loves it. They're like, okay, now let's get to the money part. Let's get to the finance part. Now, before we get there, her dad tells her that and tells me that they worked out a deal. He said that we can beat these 2 prices that the other dealerships said that they can beat, or that they can give you the best deal, whatever. They said that they can work something out. So when it's time to talk numbers, this man says they are, well, I was there, I witnessed it. So it's not he said, I witnessed it. They were over $9,000 apart from the fucking what they brought to the table. Like we were very transparent. We brought whatever it is to the table, and the dealership is $9,000 apart from where we're at. And we're like, what the fuck were we here for 5 hours? And you telling me we can beat a deal, and this motherfucker is $9,000 apart from what we're talking about. I showed you the money. I showed you where we are at. How are we $9,000 apart, and you told us that we can beat the deal? I don't get it, bro. I don't get it.
Did you bring your boxing gloves? You had
anything on top of your head, bro? You said what?
So did you bring your boxing gloves, man? I always say every time you go to a car dealership, you gotta bring some boxing gloves because you're going in there fighting. They ain't, them dudes ain't easy to deal with, man.
I'm gonna keep it a bug with you, bro. Her dad was pissed, and rightfully so. Like he's there longer than us because we was only there for a couple hours. He was there since 12, and to hear that shit after the things that they tried to work out, bro, I would have went to my house, got my boxing gloves for him, and said, "Hey, bro, here you go. I got 2 pairs. Like you can have at it, bro. You can have at it, man." Hey, ZC Pop, man, I thank you for the follow, bro. Appreciate you, man. So yeah, I don't know if you had any stories, bro, but janky salesman, I've never seen nothing to that degree ever. I've had smooth experiences with the dealership until I ran into that motherfucker. And he wanted no problems after he got caught because we went to the manager. The manager is the one who handled the deal. And when he realized he couldn't make us that promise, is when he sneakily handed it off to a dude who had no idea what he promised to us. So that shit was crazy.
Was his name Sal?
Hey, you know what I'm saying? Hey, he looked similar. Like if it was a younger version.
Salesman.
If it was a younger version, bro, you know what I'm saying? It might have been a little similar to Bruce Allen. I ain't gonna lie to you at all, bro. I look, if y'all ever had a janky salesman, and y'all are listening, bro, I feel bad for you. This is my first experience. I know stories. I've heard stories, but I ain't never seen nothing like that, bro. Like you really wanted to sell that bad? Come on.
Hey, that's straight out of The Simpsons, man.
Oh my goodness. All right, man. Hey, let's go ahead and start off the show, bro. I'm glad you're doing well. I'm glad the dog, and I'm glad everybody's well on your end. So I guess we'll start off with the quote of the week. Dre, I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over to you first, because like I said before we started the show, I was rapping last time. I need to make sure. I need to make sure you get yours out, man. We can talk about it, man. Who or what you got for quote of the week?
My quote of the week is something that I seen kind of being passed around a lot this past week on Twitter. Ron Rivera's 99% is good, but what about that one time? And that quote stood out to me because a lot of people, jumped on Ron's back for that. Now I get it. I mean, because it's kind of a straight contradiction to the whole analytics field, which is what a lot of analytics people, they took a great offense to this quote. But for me, it's just not as literal as that. I don't take it as, because nothing in football is 99%. I mean, regardless. I mean, you may have some 60-something, 40-something, or 60-something, 30-something numbers, but nothing is 99-1. So I'm just looking at Ron's mentality and approach to that. And I think this quote was in regards to his decision that first Giants game to go for 2 at the end of the game with Kyle Allen. And that's where that 99% is good on the analytics part. But what about that one time? He didn't get his name Riverboat Ron for nothing. I mean, he's a gambler. I mean, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, that's the chance you take. But I feel like in this business as a coach or whatever, you go with your gut. And if your gut says go for it, why not? I mean, because if you get it, you're a genius. But if you don't, you're an idiot. So analytics going to tell you, well, you should have listened to the majority side in this case when it doesn't work. But what about that time it does work? So I get what he's saying, and I don't agree with the outrage over the quote.
So first off, appreciate you checking in, Disco. What's going on, boss? Yeah, like I get it. Now, what I will say, I did not appreciate his argument against the analytics part. I didn't like. I'm not one who is for or against heavily on either side. However, the argument that you make when it's the 99-1, it's like, I understand you're trying to get your point across that, man, to hell with analytics type shit. I got the, like, your message is like, that's just not where I'm at with it. And I'm perfectly fine with that. All right, okay, I respect that. But I think for me, it's when you go to that level of hyperbole. I was about to say hyperbole, but hyperbole. When you do that, it kind of disintegrates the argument for me, because it's like, there's never going to be that 99-1. But in the case it was a 99-1, like we're talking about the football and the numbers here, why aren't you taking that 99 chance? Like in realistic terms, why aren't you taking that chance? So again, if you're against analytics, perfectly fine. I'm cool with that. I just feel like meaning Rivera, he's articulate enough to be able to say, look, man, if something was a 60-40, I don't give a fuck what analytics tell me. I'm gonna go ahead and do what my gut tells me I can do, or what I feel like I can do in this moment. That's perfectly fine. So yeah, that's just kind of where I was at with it. I didn't have no problem like where he stood, because we already understood where he was for a long time. That was even before he got to Washington, or even like when he got hired, it was a talk about analytics. That's perfectly fine. Like if you want to be that type of person, the type of coach that plays with your gut mainly, it works out most of the time. Okay, that's fine. Go ahead and do that. I'm just in the boat where you got to explain yourself a little bit better to make your argument a little bit more receptive to anyone who's listening. And that's where I stood with it. I think analytics do have a place in the game. I just don't think also when I'm talking about the whole the macro point, I think analytics has a point in the game, a part, but it just shouldn't be the end all be all. And I think that's who you're talking to as well, Dre, is like these analytic nerds, whoever they are in any sport. Like you shouldn't be driven solely by analytics. Yes, you can make a living off of it, but at the same time, you got to understand certain situations don't always account for numbers. You have to understand by past experiences how you should play it, and also by momentum, like what works out best for us in this instance. Hey, fuck it, I'm gonna go for it. Fuck it, I'm gonna go for 2. Fuck it, we about to play a certain coverage. Okay, but that's the only thing that I have an issue with when it comes to analytics is there are people who believe in it and lean on it too heavily, and that becomes a detriment.
Right. No, I agree, and I don't want to turn this into I hate analytics, because I actually think analytics is good for any sport, not just NFL basketball, baseball, everything. But you have to have a right balance of
Yep.
analytics, eye test, and gut feel. All of that, combined. Like, of course, I'll probably, if I was a coach, I would probably lean more towards analytics. Like, I'll say, okay, my first choice would be analytics. Second choice is gut. But like I said, at the end of the day, you have to look. Everything is with context. It's like, even if you're talking to someone, whatever, it's all about the context of the situation. So you always have to monitor that when you're looking into those type of things.
Yes, for sure. I think the next step. Actually, I'm gonna talk to somebody. I think the next step is actually to talk to get somebody on here who's actually all in favor of analytics. See how much of a
We got a few of those in the fan base.
exactly. I'm about to say we got to talk to these guys because Ron Rivera's the head coach. The subject is never going away. We can put it on the back burner, but we can always bring it back up and talk to these guys about some analytics and see how they feel for sure. But I do agree. And Disco just said coaches need to use whatever data or analytics to gain a competitive advantage. Yes, I agree. For the most part, I think that the data can tell you, for example, you're going for it on 4th and 3 inside the 40, the opponent's 40-yard line. I don't know exactly like what the number can suggest, but if it's a positive thing, why wouldn't you go for it on 4th and 3? Because obviously, what good at that point inside the 40 does punting benefit you? I Whatever situation it may be, that's how I feel. I do agree with you, Disco. I don't know if you had anything to weigh on with Disco's comments. Basically, just saying data and analytics it should be used to gain a competitive advantage.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I agree.
All right. And then moving on to a quote that I had. I don't even, what day was this? This was April 10th, so a couple days ago. I came across a tweet. It was a daily draft nugget saying picking a QB in the top 5 doesn't guarantee success. As Bill Parcells would say, they don't sell insurance for it. So the numbers that he showed, this is dating it. The data ends in 2015. It's just an old screen grab. So obviously some numbers could be a little bit out of whack, but as of 2015, from 1990 to 2015, 30 quarterbacks drafted within the top 5 picks. 50% is the combined win percentage as starters. Only 2 of them have won Super Bowls as starters. Can you guess those 2? We're talking about 1990 to 2015 top 5 picks. Let's see if you got some range with this one.
2 of them won Super Bowls. Peyton Manning, he's won, and wow, I'm stumped on the other one.
What's vicious is you were red hot and didn't even know it. It's Eli. His brother.
Oh, his brother. Wow.
Exactly. You was red hot and didn't even know it, man. Yeah. So you're talking about two quarterbacks drafted within the top 5 picks. Has won Super Bowls as starters. 3 has earned first team All Pro honors. That's Peyton, Cam Newton, Matt Ryan. And then 10 of them has more interceptions than passing touchdowns in their career. And again, this is a person that's reporting for the Jets, but at the same time, it kind of relates to a topic that we'll eventually be getting into, and probably actually right now, was because I wanted to share that nugget before I transition to the next part, which is Michael Lombardi. Michael Lombardi tweeted, wait, where did I get this? I don't know if he tweeted it or if he said it like in a podcast or it's probably an interview or something like that. But verbatim, I think Washington is going to be the next team to unload all their picks to try and get a quarterback. I think they love Trey Lance, obviously. I know Washington loves Trey Lance. I think they're willing to get him. Off first glance, Dre, off of that quote, what is going on in your mind? And then I have a follow-up for you. What's going on in your mind when you hear something like that from Mike Lombardi?
First off, I like Michael Lombardi. I respect his work. I've chatted with him a few times, but respectfully, I don't think that's going to happen. I put that, actually, the chances of that happening at low. I think there may be some people that like Trey Lance, but I don't know everybody that needs to be on board, but that love him that much to mortgage the future. But if they did love Trey Lance that much, and they thought it was right to move up 15 or 16 pick or 15 picks to go get him, I wouldn't be mad at that, because at the end of the day, like everyone says, if you have a guy you love, you go get him. So if they are all on board for that decision to go up for Trey Lance, I would not personally be upset with that. I mean, because there are some things with Trey Lance you can see. Now, he's not a guy that I would throw out into the fire right away. Year one, he would probably, I would have him, that's why you got to Ryan Fitzpatrick. That's the luxury of having a guy like that, because you're not pressed to have a savior come in year one and start. And this is also, while we're not in the most ideal position at pick 19 to get your quarterback of the future, which we desperately need, at some point. But having a guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick gives you that incentive to, if you wanted to go up and trade for Trey Lance, you can do that. Or maybe you find a day two prospect that you can groom behind a Ryan Fitzpatrick, and you can see what he has if you like him enough.
Ooh, this is crazy, because I looked at Trey Lance last night. I watched 3 games for Trey Lance. And when you're talking about Lance as a project, I completely agree. Well, actually, let me ask you this before I even continue. When you say sit at least for a year, and obviously Fitzpatrick being around is you have that luxury, the opportunity to do so. My question would be, and this is stemming from my concerns from watching him, what is there out there to guarantee that you sitting him is going to help his development? And the reason why I ask that is because in the 3 games that I watched, again, this isn't all his film for everybody that's listening and watching. This isn't all his film. It's only 3 games. But he struggled in certain aspects of the field, like intermediate to downfield. He struggled as a passer. His legs, he's a natural runner. Great vision, and he's powerful for his frame. 6'4", I think like 225. I loved every second of a person like him running the football. Like, I'm never going to be the guy who tells a quarterback, bro, protect yourself, if they know what they're doing as a runner. Like, if you're out there and you're looking like Lamar Jackson, you have that capability, you look like Cam Newton, there's no reason for anyone to tell me or to tell you to protect yourself. You are a natural runner. Trey Lance has it. I completely love that aspect of his game. He will make plays for you on the ground. But when you need him to pass the ball and you don't want to have a Lamar Jackson situation where you need somebody to make plays for you in the air, but he's really limited for you. And I think Lamar is in year 3, going on year 4. Like, what is to say when you think down the line, is this going to be an investment that you can say comfortably, all right, we're going to sit him for a year, no questions asked, but we'll revisit this. I mean, obviously you'll be working with him along the way, but we'll revisit this next year. Like, how certain are we that it's not going to necessarily, like, what do you get what I'm saying? Like, where is it? It may be a potential issue down the line as well.
Well, yeah, that's the issue. Well, in modern day NFL, is that everyone wants the now. You want to see what you got. I mean, Arizona kind of started the trend with getting rid of Josh Rosen after a year of having him. And then you just seen this past year with Ryan Fitzpatrick, where he's leading a hot Miami Dolphins team, and they sit him in the middle of a hot streak to put the rookie Tua in to see what they had in him. So it's always that when you want to know what you have in a guy. But with a guy like Trey Lance, of course, my thing is, as you stated with Trey Lance, he has tools. He has physical tools that you can't teach. I mean, he has size, he has strength, he has a rocket arm, so you can work with that. But for me, I would love a guy like that to not be given anything off the break, because you want them to work for it. I mean, kind of like with Dwayne Haskins, which you would have wanted with him, but the team was just so bad that year they had no choice but to play him. But Well, for Trey Lance, he's learning he's actually in a more stable environment here. This wouldn't be a Jay Gruden lame duck type of situation. He's coming into a stable coaching environment, and obviously, if they were to move up to get a Trey Lance, that means everyone is on board to get Trey Lance in this organization. It's not a situation where your owner is coming down and saying, "Oh, I just want this guy." This means Ron, Marty, and Martin and Scott Turner, all four of those guys are in cohesion on the pick. So that means you're going to groom him properly. You're going to make sure this kid gets the proper NFL development. You're not worried about your job security or anything. And I think that's important for a guy like Trey Lance, who has the physical tools, but he has limited experience in college football. And not only that, he didn't play at a high level at college football. He played at the second level in college football. So you want him to learn how to be a pro. You want him to learn how to read NFL defenses. You want him to kind of look at a Ryan Fitzpatrick and say, that's the way I need to model myself up after a pro. And he's going to, like I said, get the coaching from the Ken Zampese, Scott Turner, those type of guys. And like I said, everyone will have an incentive to make sure this guy is being brought along to be your next franchise QB, because everyone's job will kind of be tied to this selection and this pick.
100% agree. I think, I agree with the last statement where you mentioned everybody's going to be tied to this pick, and I think that's the most important aspect of this situation is, if you're going to make a move for any quarterback, not even just Trey Lance, if you're going to make a move for any quarterback, know that is your first official future play. Like, obviously we understand that with Fitzpatrick's age, regardless if he's here in 2022 as well, he's still just a placeholder. Regardless of what it is, he's going to be that placeholder. But whatever move you make in the draft, whether it's this year, whether it's next year, that is going to be your pick. That's going to be your future. That's exactly who it is that you're going to be investing in long term, because you're hoping it works out. Now, when it comes to Lance in particular, because that's who Lombardi spoke on, I will be willing to trade up for him, right? I just don't know how high I would go. I don't see myself going any higher than 13. And I say that because I believe the Eagles have the 12th pick. They're not going to trade up they're not going to agree to a trade with us. So I wouldn't see myself going any higher than 13. If you can who is the Giants? What? I think it's like a succession, right? It's like the Eagles,
Giants, Cowboys, and Eagles all kind of picking
in the same.
I don't know if this is the exact order, but yeah, I know they pick all similar. Yeah,
so it's gonna be hard to finagle that block of picks. So it's like you really have to either trade up into like the top 8, or you have to try and make a move if they slip past 10. I would say, like, that's just off the top of my head, like 10 in that range. I don't see myself trading for Trey Lance out if he's not, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, or Justin Fields. Like, if they're not within that 13 to 15 range, because New England, I think, picks 15 as well, I don't see myself trading up for any of these guys, man. I got to see how it plays out at that point. I'm not gonna lie to you. I can't trade up to the top 10. I can't trade up top 8. It's just too dangerous for certain prospects, and that's the few that I mentioned. It's just hard to trust. Now, that's my personal opinion. If they want to do it, it's not my picks. It's not my money. Fuck it. Go ahead. Have fun. But a person who's invested in the team from an emotional standpoint, who's also mentally beat down from all these times, all these years. But if a person who's mentally invested and emotionally invested into this team, I personally wouldn't do it. I just can't say myself inside top 10.
I agree. Like, if you ask in my personal opinion, I would prefer not to move up for anyone outside of Lawrence and Zach Wilson. But like I said, I mean, if the team was to do it, that would mean everyone was in cohesion on it. But like I said, personally, no. But I wouldn't be surprised if they actually moved up for a non-QB. How would you feel about that? Like, moving up for a position player, not QB, but, whether it's 15 or 13, wherever they want to move up to, would you be comfortable with that?
I would. I would. If we're talking top 10, then it has to be it's clearly going to be a offensive playmaker, I believe, or maybe even a tackle. I don't know. But I think it's going to be something on the offensive side of the ball if they're trading up top 10, trading into the top 10, excuse me. But I wouldn't mind a trade up if they're talking about linebacker, or even cornerback, but mainly linebacker and safety is where I was going. I wouldn't mind a trade up in that aspect. There's not going to be from who I think we spoke with Steve Shoop on the Hog Size podcast last week, and he mentioned, you know, based on his research and stuff, there wasn't really many safeties that you can really look into in the first round per se. So like it just depends on who's there. It's probably like one or two safeties in the first round that you can look at and say, all right, they are gonna go within the range that Washington's picking. Do you want to trade up for him and like make a slight trade? Okay, go for it. If you want to do like a Micah Parsons, who I really want to look at because I keep hearing a lot of things, good and bad. The bad being off the field stuff. But I want to see what Micah Parsons is looking at because Washington can clearly use a guy like him. If they're all in on a guy like Parsons, who can bring you that versatility, the speed, the sideline to sideline coverage, I'm for it. But that's as far as I'd go. It's certain positions I would trade up for. Just to close that out, it'd be an offensive playmaker if they're in the top 10. But also we're talking about safety, linebacker, and maybe even corner. Just depends. What about you, man?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, my personal opinion is if it was, I think it would be three guys that I would look into. One of the guys I wouldn't go up too far for, but I mean, I understand if they like the guy, but the Darisaw kid, the left tackle.
Oh yeah,
because I know they want a left tackle. And of course Micah Parsons, and then the greedy pick would be jumping up to get Kyle Pitts, but you jumping up at quarterback range if you going up for Kyle Pitts.
Yes, he is going. Dude, I think he's easily going probably like top seven. Top seven.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Like, when is the last time TJ Hawkinson was probably the last guy who went top 10, right? Or did he go like slightly outside of the top 10? TJ Hawkinson was definitely probably like one of the most recent first round tight ends that was selected. I just don't remember exactly where he was in.
Yeah. I think you're on the money with that. Close enough to it because Detroit drafted him, and I remember they drafted Ebron too in the first round. He wasn't top 10, I don't believe, but he was a first round pick, which Detroit they don't mind spending their resources on wide receivers and tight ends.
Clearly, based on their history. Shout out to Roy Williams and Calvin Johnson, man. I love y'all. But yeah, also Disco mentioned, speaking on Washington, they are a team on the come up. They may be picking even lower next year. I'm okay with that. I'm okay if they don't move up, but I want Ron to get his guy and we hold him accountable. I think that's a really good point. The accountability word. And I actually want to talk about. We'll get into it in like a couple minutes, but the accountability word is strong nowadays. I feel like, just in general here, I'm speaking. There is a lot of ways for people to find excuses like when things don't work out, and it's completely fine. But at the end of the day, oh yeah, Disco Hawkinson was a first round pick, eighth overall. But okay. there's like reasons and ways for people to make excuses for why a person didn't work out, and a lot of it doesn't really focus on like the root cause. It could be a variety of issues, like the coaching scheme. The coaches didn't work out well with the player. The player just wasn't motivated enough. It can be they didn't study, they didn't do XYZ, they didn't take something too serious. Whatever. I think accountability is the strongest word and strongest thing in this portion because if you do trade up, just for your case, like we both agree that in our personal opinion, we wouldn't trade up into the top 10. But if Ron sits here and says in year 2 that he wants a guy top 10, he takes him. I don't know, like you gotta live with that because eventually, if you're trading up from 19 to top 10, you're giving up multiple firsts. I don't know like how many it is, but you're giving up multiple firsts. And you can possibly because of these guys that's coming up in the offseason, the next couple of off seasons, your pending free agents, you can possibly kind of, have like a major shift in your roster and maybe even your quarterback position again because something didn't work out because you decided to trade up. So I think accountability is a strong word. I'm not saying that something won't work out. I don't want to put that in the atmosphere. I'm just saying about the cautionary side of this whole situation is you have to take into account that if these guys aren't your guys, you don't have to chase the quarterback, but see what you got in the later rounds or something like that. I don't know. That's just where I'm at with it.
Yeah, no, and I'm not pressed about trading up because I feel like, I mean, like I said, 19 is not the most ideal draft spot for a team that, in our situation where a lot of people feel we have a few needs, but I still feel like you can get quality talent there, and keep building to what you have. I mean, you are building something good, I believe, when you look at the roster, but here's the thing. Now, you mentioned the stat about the quarterbacks that, go top 5. There's not a lot of guaranteed success there. The stats don't lie. And then, lately you have a lot of guys that get drafted in the 3rd or 4th round every year that, it seems like at least every year that one of these guys pop from the 3rd or 4th rounds, and turn out to be franchise quarterbacks or at least get franchise money. You got Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott. I mean, you have a lot of these guys. It's happening more and often, but people focus so much on the 1st round guys, and I'm probably gonna get a lot of heat for this, but I'm actually intrigued by a guy. It's a guy that intrigues me. He could be either a day 2, a 3rd or 4th round pick,
Let's
but
hear it. Who we talking about?
The kid from Stanford, Davis Mills. I've been studying him a little bit lately.
Tell me, because I need to catch up. Let me know when you get a chance. Yeah. What are you hitting for?
This is a guy now. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, and he sat behind a couple of QBs at Stanford to start his career. He hasn't started that many games, and this is where the Ryan Fitzpatrick factor comes back into play again, because Ryan Fitzpatrick, you're not in a rush to kind of rush somebody on the field. Now, a guy like Davis Mills, he has physical tools. He can play, but, I mean, he's not a dual-threat quarterback like a lot of modern offenses like, but I feel like he's one of those guys that processes things. His biggest knock is injuries. As noted by, I think he's only started 13 career games, but he's a guy you can sit there, you can groom. He's going to be either a 3rd or 4th round pick in this draft. He actually had a really good pro day, and he's a guy I believe that someone is going to take a chance on, and he could be that next Kirk Cousins. As far as, like I said, I'm not saying this guy's going to be a top 12 to 10 QB in the league or nothing, but he's a guy I feel like that could sneak in and be one of those Kirk Cousins type of guys that ends up taking advantage of the quarterback market and getting that money. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Ron and Scott take a look into that guy.
Hey, I don't know who Pent is. Appreciate you commenting, but Dre, somebody asked if you wearing a suit on draft night, bro.
I don't know, man. I might just go ahead and wear a sweatsuit this time for this draft, man. It's 19, so I don't know, man. There's no names that sound like it's gonna be popping, but I know that was Rob that asked that question. Only Rob will ask me that question. Okay, Rob asked me about 2 things. He always asks me if I'm gonna wear a suit or if I'm ready for sundress season.
Well, first of all, I think a lot of people. Specifically, what is it? Actually, we're right around the corner. I leave it at that. You know what I'm saying? But I think in terms of Davis Mills, I'm interested. I think it was Louis Riddick that brought him to my attention. Now, I'm not necessarily, no disrespect to Louis, but he is also the guy that convinced a lot of people Dwayne Haskins was the real deal. Oh yeah. But he's also said other things, but that's the main thing on the top of my head, because a lot of people were like, "Yo, Louis, why aren't you the GM for the Washington Redskins at the time? I'm saying, come on over, we need you." And and then you get that type of opinion. With that being said, I don't always hold people to like that one thing. And Davis Mills was on my radar because of him, I believe. Um, and I appreciate you giving me a head start. I definitely want to look into him. I'm gonna look into him before the draft start. But that was the guy that I was thinking of, in terms of like the later round prospects that maybe Washington can take a look at. But I think for Washington, it's gonna have to be the second round, I think, for Davis Mills, because eventually these quarterbacks get talked up a lot. And regardless of where we see, because in our mind it makes sense for a Davis Mills to go like third or fourth round pick. But when you're talking about in the circles, eventually when draft day comes, some people get some. This is gonna be it's gonna be a reach, but this is just the nature of it. Like some people get talked up to a point where it's like, all right, bro, I know who needs a quarterback at this round. I know who's coming up in this pick, what they're likely looking at. Either I trade up in front of them, not necessarily trading in the first round. I'm just saying like trade up in front of them to get this guy that I like, or my pick is coming up. Nobody's touched Davis Mills, or nobody's touched quarterback X, whoever it is. It's time to make this move, and we keep it pushing. If it's a reach, the only way it'll be a reach is if it didn't work out. Other than that, I think we got our guy. We can keep it pushing. I'm all in for QBX and in round 2 or in round 3 or in round 4, whatever it is.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Jamal, because I hate the word reach. Reach is the worst word in draft season. Like it's people said we reached for Antonio Gibson last year. Oh, you could have got Antonio Gibson. How do you know? See, here's the thing. Here's my problem with the word reach. What do you know about another NFL GM's draft board? All you're doing is following Walter Football and these other draft mock sites, which is cool. I mean, these are fun to look at until draft time happens. Yeah, but they are nowhere indicative of a NFL GM's draft board. You don't know who has who ranked where on that draft board. I remember hearing chatter before the draft that they loved Antonio Gibson. I put it out there. I said, hey, this is a guy I think, they're going to look at. People, oh, no, that'd be a reach. They shouldn't draft him because we didn't have a second round pick. So it would have been, we knew we were drafting Chase Young in the first round, but we didn't have a second round pick. So presumptuously, a lot of people already knew I was talking about Antonio Gibson as the third round pick, which people responded to me, oh, I wouldn't take him in the third round. He's a fourth round pick, this, that, and the third. And then look what happens. The guy looked like he should have been a first round
10 tutties rookie season, and he got hurt. Motherfucker missed some time, had 10 touchdowns, bro. I told people during the season, too, and I'm obviously I'm going to let you finish, but I told people during the season, too, like this man, if it wasn't for Justin Herbert's ridiculous season coming out of nowhere, bro, Antonio Gibson, if he wasn't hurt, he's definitely in the talk for Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year. Yeah, he's definitely up there. He had 10 touchdowns before he got hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I still don't even think they used him to his full potential last year. I mean, he was just getting started. He was just scratching the surface of what he can do. I mean, the kid didn't even play running back in college. I mean, he was a gadget player in college, but they saw something in him and said, we can use this guy as a full-time every down back, which people didn't think that could be done for him in his first year, which was why a lot of people were pissed that they released Adrian Peterson before the season started. But Antonio Gibson looked like every bit of what you want in a modern day NFL back. And people said he was a reach. Even after he got drafted, people said he was a reach. People say, oh, that's a reach. He should have been picked in the third round. But that's why I hate the word reach, because there's no way you can determine that a guy's a reach until at least 2 to 3 years in his career. I mean, more times than that. Sometimes you could probably tell right away, but more times than that, 2 to 3 years, you don't know if a guy's a reach. Yeah. We said that about the Cowboys when they were filling up their offensive line with guys like Travis Frederick in the first round. People was like, oh, they drafted a center in the first round. You should have been a third round pick. Turned out to be a great pick.
I'm about to say, yeah, you know what I'm saying? We know people who are going to be a reach immediately. And that's how I felt, you know what I'm saying, when Josh Doctson was drafted. Like, the second he was drafted, I knew it was a reach. I knew it.
I didn't know it.
No, I'm just playing. I ain't know not a thing, man. I was a fan. I had to throw another jab at you, bro. But two things, man. DeJour, mentioned Bruce Arians even said that he was going to draft Gibson in the second round if Winfield wasn't there. And then oh shoot, we got a couple more comments. Disco mentioned obviously on a positive note, he thinks that a rookie QB would be placed in a great situation with an improving roster. And then lastly, your boy Zim mentioned he can't wait for the setup for Gibson out wide and Curtis in the backfield and watch opposing DCs freak out. And I actually think that's a good point, Zim, off the strength of you have Humphreys, you have Gibson, and now you have Curtis Samuel as well. And who knows what the draft is going to look like, Dre, when that comes around. But obviously, we know that Washington is still like from a just on paper, you're not you're not lacking. You're lacking like that dominant playmaker, that go-to guy. Terry McLaurin is still growing, and he's actually taking the role of that playmaker. But like, there's no what's the word? Somebody who can strike from 90 yards out, 80 yards out, in any point of the field. I think that's not there just yet until, you know what I'm saying, things work out on the field with the current guys. That's one thing. But just right now on paper, I don't think it's there. But with that being said, I agree with Zim in the sense that there's going to be a variety of ways Scott Turner can manage these guys on the field and in certain situations. And I think that kind of works out with what they're trying to do with the speed and the sideline to sideline things. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I also want to see how this draft unfolds because they're going to need additional guys to kind of like shake up the I guess it's a scheme. I don't know, but they're going to need something to shake up and have like a variety of things. I don't know if Cam Sims. I don't know if that tight end. Kelvin Harmon, the tight end that they just signed, which I was going to talk about in a little bit. But I don't know if these younger guys are able to be that I'm looking for. Personally, I don't know.
No, I agree 100% with you and Disco. Actually, I think the team needs another wide receiver. I mean, an outside guy. I mean, you got Terry, one outside spot. Now, Curtis Samuel is a guy. I don't think he's comfortable completely on the outside. I think he's a guy you can probably line up anywhere on the field, and he's a guy he's a weapon. That's what I look at Curtis Samuel as. Yeah. But I want the reliable other outside receiver. And a lot of people always tell me, "Oh, well, you're sleeping on Kelvin." No, I'm not sleeping on Kelvin Harmon. I haven't seen it yet, and right. I'm not putting my eggs in.
It's impossible to sleep on him.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's what I'm saying. Like his first year, okay, we've seen a couple of catches, but he didn't play. He didn't get enough opportunities to show he can be that guy I can trust and pencil down right now on a piece of paper. And then he was hurt his second year, so I can't fully rely on Kelvin Harmon yet. So until I see that, I am going as though I don't have that guy yet.
Touche mentioned, what's going on, boss? Now I'm gonna say it. He said, Gandy Golden dude is a fraud. But I will say, I think it's a funny comment, but I will say I'm not there to call it quits on him just yet. We're in a situation where, he did, for what he's worth, he was hurt, but also like he was very unproductive when he was on the field. Like it was like, if you had 11 men on the field and Gandy Golden was on the field, it was probably like 10 because he was invisible. He wasn't really productive. He was out of sight, out of mind. I just wouldn't give up on him just yet. It'll be interesting to see how he turns that year one into like whatever growth he has or whatever he learned. We'll see. But Gandy Golden, I wouldn't give up on him just yet. But we can move on to the next segment, man. The shit you see on social media. I got one thing, and I guess it's a good discussion for everybody that's in here, that's live, and also for you, Dre. I came across a tweet from Al Galdi. Everybody who's obviously in the Washington football community has probably heard of Al Galdi at this point. The tweet goes as Washington football team, which has zero proven depth at tight end after Logan Thomas, released Thaddeus Moss. And then in quotations, off waiving him last August before putting him on IR. It is a reminder of how often we, myself included, and I'll include myself because I'm reading his tweet, how we get way too excited about players we shouldn't probably be that excited about. My question to everybody in the chat and to you, Dre, obviously you go first, is Um, what is the right mix to have between being a fan and being realistic with your expectations? Now, I know that's kind of a hard question to ask, but like thinking critically, there has to be like some type of middle ground in which you understand, like a reasonable guy or a reasonable woman. You understand where your fandom is kicking in versus you understand where it's like, all right, bro, this is what you may be missing. You may want to take this in consideration and fall back just a little bit. Like, what is the right mix to have for a fan? I don't even know if that's a hard question or not, but that's just what I want to ask you all.
Well, I mean, it's a hard mix if you're talking about a regular sports team, but this is the Washington football team. And I feel like you have to be realistic with this team. I mean, I'm going 36 years old. So I was 6 years old. I was 6 years old when we won our last Super Bowl. And ever since then, all I've known is disappointment. Like when we do something good, it's a pleasant surprise. So and because of that, I apply that to my everyday life. I love pleasant surprises because of the Washington football team. So I have to always be realistic in my expectations with them. Whenever I'm talking Washington football team, I have to be realistic in everything in my expectations of them. Like, if you ever talk to me about, like, most people be like, oh, what you think their record's going to be? Oh, what you think they're going to do this shit? Look, I don't predict records. I know what we're going to do. Like, we're not going to do well, but, this is the situation. But most of the time, not like we're like the record, but at the same time, you still have to keep expectations low. I say, like Jim's media. You got to keep expectations medium. Or really, as I say, you can't just already say, oh, everything turned in the corner, we're going to be great now. We've done this before. We don't know. It should look great, but we don't know at the end of the day if we're going to be disappointed or what. So vary yourself from disappointment. I'm just always realistic and cautiously optimistic as the most fan.
So I agree with you. Actually, everything that you said, I agree 100%. Because I think we're the same. Like, we have different opinions on things, but in terms of our approaches, it's probably the exact same in terms of fandom. Now, what I will say is, like, what I wanted to start with, I don't have, like, if you're a fan and you acknowledge the fact that, you know what I'm saying, I don't give a damn what the hell's going on. I'm rooting for these guys 110%. If you on my team, I got you. If you against my team, I don't really fuck with you. But if you are that type of person who can acknowledge that in the midst of your opinions and stuff like that, my hands up. I respect it. I know who I'm dealing with when I talk to you. Be that guy 100%. Be that woman 100%. I'm cool with that. But I think when you kind of mix it and you kind of talk about certain topics and things like that, and you swear that you're being rational, that's not for me to decide. I don't know the person who's talking. I mean, unless we're like close friends, but like on social media, if you have these opinions, I think there's a lot of things that some people can say, including me. I'm talking about can say off of first thing that pops in their head, but is it the most realistic thing sometimes? I remember back in, it was like 2013ish. So clearly, like, that's the time frame. I thought at that moment that Santana Moss was a legitimate, I think he was a legitimate number 2 or number 1 receiver. And my man's at work. It's like, nigga, he's a Niners fan, so he's not even like, he has no dog in the fight. He's like, nigga, stop talking to me. I'm like, bruh. I'm like, how you gonna tell me? Say I'm getting worked up. I'm like, how you gonna tell me Santana Moss ain't no dog? He'll cook anybody. Put anybody in front of him, he'll cook them. And I'm sitting here talking to him, not even realize, like, bro, at this point, we're not talking realistically at this point. I'm like, I feel like I'm coming from the position of you're sleeping on XYZ. Like, you're sleeping on this guy. You're sleeping on Santana. But that's not back in 2013. He wasn't a number one, and it's perfectly fine to say that. But you couldn't tell me shit. And I say that to say I agree with you 100%. Like, over time, you'll start to realize that, especially with a team like us who hasn't really won. You said since you were 6. Since I was born, I don't even know what winning looks like. I think that a lot of people just have to understand, like, as time evolves, you get a better perspective because you're removed from winning. You get a better perspective of what is possible, what's likely to happen, and also what you can expect moving forward. And I think the best approach to encapsulate every single one of those things is to be cautiously optimistic, and that's where I was going with it. I think that's the best approach, but also just to help yourself from getting hurt from a team that hasn't really proven anything in 30 years. That's probably the best bet.
And it's funny that you mentioned your situation about Santana Moss. I've actually had this conversations with a lot of fans over the years about Ryan Kerrigan, and
man. Oh my goodness, that's a trigger for me. Go ahead.
And that's the thing, though. People will always assume that you're hating on Ryan Kerrigan, if you don't say Ryan Kerrigan is this great dominant pass rusher, then you're hating on him. I don't hate Ryan Kerrigan. I think Ryan Kerrigan is everything they usually call the stereotypical white pass rusher. He has a high motor. He's relentless. He's always on the play, but he's never been a dominant guy. He's never been a guy you game plan against as an offensive coordinator. He's never been the guy that frees up other guys on the other side of the pass. Usually, he played with Brian Arakpo for a lot of years, and I think he benefited from that. Even though I had my own issues with Brian Arakpo as far as like him just flailing his arms in the air every time. I'm like, oh, call the holding. No, Brian, learn the new pass rush. Right. Don't just bull rush. But no, I mean, I felt like I always felt like Ryan Kerrigan was the greatest complimentary pass rusher guy you can have. He was never the marquee pass rusher guy in this league. And a lot of people always tell you that, oh, well, you're hating on him. Ryan's great. He's this. I mean, Ryan's been great for this franchise, no doubt. No, don't get me wrong. If you want to put Ryan in the ring of fame, you're not going to get an argument out of me, in FedEx Field. But he was never the guy that you would call the elite dominant pass rusher in his era. He gets compared to J.J. Watt a lot, rightfully so, because they came out in the same draft. But J.J. Watt was leagues ahead of Ryan Kerrigan. A lot of the Homer fans that kind of don't live in the reality expectations, they don't see it that way. They just look at numbers and say, oh, this is it.
I'm so glad when you started with Ryan Kerrigan. I'm so glad that you went the way you went, because I'm on your side with this one. I don't disagree with you at all. I think one of the things that I've gotten into so much with people is that you'll see people see the numbers and say that he's elite because he's right up there with Von Miller. And I'm like, bro, Von Miller has a variety of moves in which he gets to the quarterback. And on top of that, he makes impact plays in big games and big situations. I will never forget the argument that I used to this day. This shit happened in 2016. But to this day, I will use this argument with Ryan Kerrigan. This man went a whole season without having a sack in the second half of a game. Like, that
he disappears.
Yes, that should tell you one thing about Kerrigan in itself. Like, and this is not a criticism turned like a rant that turns to Kerrigan. It just so happens that, you know what I'm saying, we talk about him. He's just put in situations where, like, you have the opportunity to make a play, but he just doesn't do it. And he's had his moments early on where he makes the big plays, he sets a tone. But like, when you're asking a guy who you had as your number one rusher for, I wouldn't count 2020 clearly because his situation, he was having spot duties, but for I guess like 8 years he was your number one guy, and he's not really pulling through for you in critical moments. That should tell you the type of player he is. He needs help. He's a good player. He just needs help, and we never got him that. And the only time we got him that was when he was on his way out. in terms of production and age and durability. And that's 2020 with Chase Young. That's the last time we got that man help, and the only time.
Now, Jamal, speaking of that, I seen something on Twitter today that kind of made me laugh in a sense. But I forget. I'm sorry to whoever posted the original comment about it. But someone posted that Brian Arakpo said that Chase Young reminds him of him.
Oh my God, I saw
and
it.
that was egregious to me. And to me, some people actually responded to this particular comment saying that oh, you're forgetting Arakpo's stats. See, this is now stats for a pass rusher is kind of insignificant to me, unless you're like breaking records as a sack artist or something. Because pass rushers make such an impact on the game that stats won't always show. You won't see it in sack numbers. Like, honestly, Chase Young's rookie year, I can never remember Brian Arakpo having that big of an impact in any season, even at his best. I never remember him having the impact that Chase Young had on the field. You know, and that's as far as like changing game
when the
plans.
hell has
like,
Arakpo ever commanded a triple team?
Exactly. You know, Arakpo's best move was the holding move. It was the move where, oh, you're holding me. Look, let me throw my hands up. You know, that was Arakpo's best move in his whole career. You know, because he never he wasn't the athletic swim move type of guy. He was the bull rusher. I'm going to overpower you type of guy. We knew that coming out of Texas with Brian Arakpo, but that's why, you know, a lot of fans kind of misconstrue. They look at stats and they say, oh, well, Arakpo was a double digit. And Arakpo wasn't a bad player. This is not me saying Arakpo was a bad player for us. You know, what I'm saying is Arakpo wasn't a great player for us. Again, he wasn't a great player for us. He wasn't Chase Young. Chase Young made an impact that I hadn't seen a defensive end make for this team since Charles Mann or Dexter Manley played for this team.
Hey, look, I'm not even gonna comment on that because you know better than me, my brother. Especially with those two. So I got some comments to catch up on. Disco mentioned about when we spoke on fandom. Fandom is thinking that the tight end that they signed today, I keep forgetting to go to him. Wait, what is his name again?
I don't know his name either, but I hear people really going in on him, like say he looks good.
Samus Reyes. That's who his name is. Samus Reyes. He said
he's from Chile, right?
Yes, sir. They said Fandom is thinking that Samus Reyes, who they signed today, is the Week 1 starter. Fandom is anointing Taylor Heineke the Week 1 starter after 5 good quarters of football. Balance is signing him and looking to upgrade. Hey, Disco, you on point, my brother. I don't think I disagree with you at all at this point. Pimp mentioned that Kerrigan is a Robin, not a Batman. Another thing that, you know, I think we all can agree on at that point. He said he'd never seen so many. He said he'd never seen so many insignificant sacks in my life. The constant 4-sack games where he would get against backups. I won't forget that game against Jacksonville where he had 4 sacks. I think that was the Blaine Gabbert rookie year or it was 2014 for sure. I still remember the year. I just don't remember who the quarterback was. If it was Blaine Gabbert or was it the guy after him that I'm drawing blanks with, the dude from UCF. Anyway, 4-sack game right there. And then he had, he mentioned that he had like 6 different occasions where there was 4-game streaks with no sacks, empty steps, man. So I think those are, like, again, y'all are making some valid points, man. Kerrigan, you know, he's had his concerns and stuff like that. My bad, boss. So we can move on to the next segment, which is the Washington Football Spotlight. I have a couple on here. I don't remember if you said you want me to go ahead and knock these 2 out, Dre?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. So the first one that I have for the first off, can Curve. I don't know why I'm struggling to say that. But I appreciate you tuning in to begin with, man. I don't know how you found us, but I do appreciate you tuning in. We are about to talk about 3 scenarios to land a quarterback. So you all, when you're reading this, go ahead or when you're hearing this, go ahead and chime in if you can or if you want to. If you don't, it's fine. But 3 scenarios to land a quarterback, Dre. The first one, I'll just read these things verbatim. The first one, and when I finish, you can let me know which one you think of works best. The first scenario, trade. Oh, let me get my credit first. My bad. This is from Rigo's Rag by Jonathan Eig. But yeah, first scenario, trade with Denver into the number 9 spot to acquire that pick. You'd give up this year's first, second round pick, and a 2022 third rounder. The second one. Oh, so he's saying your options. I'm sorry. He's saying your options are at that point when you trade up to go to number 9 is Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones. So you have your pick of the litter for this one. You have 3 picks. So that's the first scenario. The second scenario, trade with the Los Angeles Chargers. You're going to the number 13 number 13 spot. To acquire that, you're giving up this year's first, this year's second, the early second round pick, and then this year's fourth. So you're giving up the first round, the second, and the third, one of your second rounds. And then your options here is Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones again. This is for the number 13th overall spot. And then the last scenario, oh, okay, you're not trading up at all. You're using a mid-round pick on a developmental quarterback. So this is where Davis Mills comes in. You're talking Kyle Trask, Davis Mills, Kellen Mond. So to sum it up, first option, you're trading into the top 10. You're giving up a first this year. You're giving up a second round, and then you're giving up a third round. The second option is you're trading to the number 13 spot. You're giving up first round, a second, and a third. A third and a fourth. And then the last one is not trading up at all. You're taking a developmental quarterback, mid-round pick for Kyle, Davis, or Kellen.
Okay, so for me, for this year, I'm going with the latter pick, the last one. And like I said, and that's strictly because I don't love Mac Jones, Justin Fields, or Trey Lance. I mean, I get it if you want to make that move for those guys, but I don't love any of those prospects enough to give up significant picks because I feel like every one of those prospects you give up, none of those guys are guys you can say, all right, we're going to plug and play. Now, only way I'm moving up and giving up significant draft capital is if this is a guy that you can plug and play. I mean, Mac Jones, maybe just because, he's more of a processor type of guy. He's not a guy that needs to learn the ins and outs of like X's and O's, but he's more of he doesn't have the tools of a Justin Fields or a Trey Lance type of guy. So I don't love him. I don't love him. Like I said, the only 2 quarterbacks that, if they were not obviously going to be the first top 2 picks would be Lawrence and Zach, the other guy, the BYU quarterback. Zach Wilson. But I will take the last option of drafting a mid-round guy. Now, I know the statistics aren't that great, but if we're going to sit a guy for a year, I'd rather sit the mid-round guy because you don't owe him that much of an obligation to not upgrade at his position when he's not it. So, but at the same time, you're still making greater picks at the rounds 1, 2, and the 2 third-round picks that we have. You're still building on the roster that we have. So a lot of people gave Ron shit for not, committing to trying to go up for a quarterback in this year's draft, and him saying that, we can wait a year or 2. I may not agree with the 2-year thing. Hopefully we get the answer by next year. I mean, I don't want to keep going into Ron's 4th year or whatever saying we don't have a guy, but you want to be able to say, all right, we can get our guy next year, or we'll have a guy, we can groom a guy in the 3rd or 4th round like a Davis Mills or a Kellen Mond, which a lot of people hate, and say that this is a guy that we can bring along, and you'll know probably in practice or not if you have something in that 3rd or 4th round pick. So I'll go with that option over the trade up.
I struggle with this one, man, because I mean, clearly I said earlier, anywhere between 13 and 15. I wouldn't mind a trade up. And in this scenario, this specific scenario, I got three options, but I also am not giving up a lot. I'm only giving up a couple of this year's picks, and which is that'll be fine with me. Um, but then you think about the options that is presented to you in scenario three, talking Kyle, Davis, and Kellen. If you're guaranteed any of those three based on these scenarios, I can't trade up. Um, I can't trade up, and this is obviously my personal thing, my personal preference. Because in this scenario, I'm giving three quarterbacks: Cal, Davis, and Kellen. I don't know exactly how Washington feels on any of these guys, but at the same time, you're talking about three quarterbacks who one doesn't have that much experience, and Davis Mills, as you told us earlier, Dre. But compared to Kellen and Kyle and Kellen, both of them, they have the experience that you need from a guy that you're going to be drafting mid round, which is fairly well. These guys know how to play the quarterback position to a degree. Now, if you're a fan of Kellen Mond, that's just between you and whatever film that you're watching. I don't have an opinion just yet on Kellen Mond. I wasn't. He actually wasn't even on my radar for Washington. But I think scenario three probably works out best for me because you can work with these guys knowing the situation that they're coming into. These guys aren't necessarily pressured to be that number one guy just yet. You have Ryan Fitzpatrick. You can sit these guys, but also get them a couple reps here and there. The question is how the reps will play out because Ron did guarantee a quarterback competition this year. He said that he bullshitted last year, which was a mistake on his end. So you're talking about four quarterbacks maybe that's going to be in a competition, which is going to be kind of awkward because there's not enough footballs to go around. But uh, bottom line, I'm going with scenario three. I'm taking either Kyle, Davis, or Kellen. And so I'm sitting here thinking that Dre, I'm sitting here thinking that it was a new commenter. That's you talking about trade up or die. So yeah. Zam obviously mentioned first rounder or die, and one who could be elite. And then appointment only mentioned trade up, get Kyle Pitts or Chase. Jamar Chase, I'm assuming, right? And I think the one thing with anyone who could be elite, that comment, it's hard to necessarily say. I get where you're coming from. You just want to make sure something is a sure thing, but you're never really getting it, Dre, in a draft format. Like if you're going to trade up for someone who can be elite, who can, like we talked about this earlier, Dre. Obviously, we may have some people who just tuned in, but I cannot say for certain outside of the two that you mentioned, and Trevor and Zach, who may be the cream of the crop. I can't say anybody else is guaranteed to be elite. I don't even see elite traits in terms of passing from anybody outside of Trevor Lawrence. Excuse me, that's disrespectful. I've seen Zach Wilson make some throws, but I haven't seen elite passer traits from a lot of these quarterbacks yet. Just casually watching throughout the season, I haven't seen that. So I don't know, like if we're guaranteed anything elite outside of the first two quarterbacks. Don't know.
No, and that's why I said I wouldn't make that, a drastic move to move up because for me personally, and like I said, this is me. If you ask in my opinion, I don't love these quarterbacks enough. Like I feel like Justin Fields, he has ability. I mean, he's another 5-star quarterback, but again, you're talking about a guy who he has issues. He has. I mean, not the greatest tape. When you go back and look at a lot of his tape, even people that study these things 24/7 say Justin Fields doesn't have the greatest tape. He has issues. I listened to Chris Cooley earlier on the Kevin Sheehan show, and even Chris Cooley almost was talking about Justin Fields like he was Dwayne Haskins in a sense, minus the the other stuff that might come with Haskins, but. That's not the most encouraging thing to hear. A lot of people like Trey Lance, and like I said, Trey Lance has the tools. But again, Trey Lance is a guy that a lot of people also said he wouldn't start him in the first year. A lot of
pass attempts,
people
bro.
that
Career.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. A lot of people say that. So when you're talking about guys like this, you're talking about guys that you may have to wait and see what you have. And in the modern NFL, that's just not what a lot of teams are doing. They're not waiting to see what they have. They want to see what they have right now because they're not setting their franchise back 5 to 6 years, waiting on the next guy or waiting on this guy to become the next thing. So that's why when you're talking now, if you're talking about a guy like Trey Lance falling to me, or maybe even not even, maybe Trey Lance falls to 14 or 15, which is, I don't think that's going to happen. But if that was to happen, I wouldn't be upset about a move up to, a couple of spots. Give it up much. The risk is low. It's a high reward, low risk in that situation. But when you're talking about moving, double digit picks to go get a guy like Trey Lance, Justin Fields, or I don't think. I think Mac Jones would be a 49. So we're just going to talk about Justin and Trey Lance.
Yeah.
Those two guys, you're going to have to move double-digit picks to get those two guys. And I just see too many question marks between the two of those to say that's what I want to do as far as moving up. So, like I said, when you present me the three options of those two guys moving up in the draft, or you're going to give me the third or fourth round pick in a Davis Mills or a Kyle Trask or something like that, I'll roll that dice later before I roll that dice forward for guys that has a lot of question marks in the first round.
All right. So we have something to play right off of the three scenarios that I presented. Was another just these are players that's mentioned in which from who is this from? With the first pick, that's the website. They said 3 prospects to avoid in the 2021 NFL draft. And I'll read these 3. This is just we don't have to comment on it, but the first one is Mac Jones. He mentioned he had a historic college. Excuse me, not he. Adam Burris is the writer for this one. But he mentioned Mac Jones had a historic season in college. However, he's polarizing because of his limited upside and his incredible supporting cast. He had a lot of help, and that may make him undesirable to many. That was the first guy. Second, oh my goodness, the second guy was Kellen Mond. He mentioned is another guy. He's another quarterback who will price himself out of being a reasonable selection, but Washington cannot become enamored with his upside. Okay. All right, I would read this whole thing, but I'm not reading your lines verbatim. But he's saying they can't be enamored with this upside. And then the last guy, which I seen this earlier and I agree with, is Kadarius Toney, the receiver out of Florida. He mentioned how he's dynamic, quick, almost similar to Curtis Samuel, but he's expected to go in the first round and could be rich considering his profile. He's underdeveloped as a route runner and needs some manufactured touches to truly work as a player in the offense. The first 2 I kind of disagree with. I wouldn't completely steer clear of them, but Kadarius Toney is a guy where I did feel off a first glance, we're looking at a slot receiver. That's what people honed in on when that's what they identified him as. Kadarius Toney is a guy where it's like, in what realm, in what world are you taking a slot receiver in the first? And hoping that works out. I personally can't do it. And I won't ever draft a person who has a designated role to play in the first round. I think we've seen that in Tavon Austin in the past. We've seen John Ross get drafted because he had a 4.2 40. I can't think of all the other ones at the top of my Denard. I'm thinking of Denard Robinson, but he was actually drafted, I think, in the third or fourth.
He's a later round guy. Yeah.
But there are certain people that are drafted because of their capabilities and what they bring to an offense in the first round, and it just doesn't necessarily work out like that. I think Kadarius is that example of Tavon Austin. Just off the first glance, the first thing that pops up in my head, you got to be wary of these guys. Clearly, he'll contribute. Clearly, he's a talented guy. But are you gonna make that pick for a receiver, more specifically a slot receiver in the first round? I am not doing it, and that's the one I agree with. I will stay away from is Kadarius Toney.
Well, my thoughts on receivers in the first round, slot or not, at the 19th pick, I'm not the biggest fan of drafting a wide receiver unless you just have a top notch talent in the top 10, like a Calvin Johnson, or even like he doesn't play wide receiver, but Kyle Pitts at tight end. Those are the type of guys I'm taking, in the first round when I look at, those skill positions. But as we've seen as Washington football fan, who of our best wide receivers been in the let's just say the last 10 years? The last 10 years, our best wide receivers have been Pierre Garcon. I don't remember where he was picked, if he was even picked, but he's a low round pick.
Yeah.
Terry McLaurin, third round pick. Deshaun Jackson, second round pick. That's what I'm saying.
Jamison Crowder. I think you got everybody.
Yeah, Jamison Crowder, third or fourth round pick. So these have been our best, and these are guys who can go elsewhere and play. A lot of times when you look at the Washington football team roster, you look at our guys and you say these guys wouldn't start nowhere else. But you look at guys like Jamison Crowder, who's been, even though the Jets are bad, Jamison Crowder still is a hell of a player. Deshaun Jackson's always been a hell of a player. He wasn't a first round pick. Terry McLaurin is a stud. He's a third round pick. So I say all that to say that you can wide receiver every year in the draft is usually deep everywhere, because you got gems that you haven't heard about. You got guys that are studs in schools that don't get a lot of attention, and they, whatever the case may be. So from my experience as a Washington football team, those Kadarius Tonys and those type of guys, I believe you could probably find, if you're sitting at the 19th pick in the draft, I believe you can find a Kadarius Toney in the third round, and you just don't know about him. You may not even heard his name yet, but he's probably in the third round somewhere. So no, I'm not gonna, he probably wouldn't be in the top 4 or 5 picks of my choices for the 19th pick.
All right. Just to catch up on some comments, Zim mentioned, he doesn't mind waiting on for 1 year on a guy with tools. He likely play some as well, like Tua did with Ryan last year. Disco mentioned Jared Goff. He said, "Oh my goodness, Jared Goff. Look at Jared Goff. This dude went top 10, and they still got rid of him after 3 double-digit winning seasons. I'd kill him. Oh Lord, Disco, Disco. Hey. But yeah, he said he'd kill for that. For Washington to have that." And then another couple comments. Given the use of statistics in the 3 first rounders in 3 straight years, you'd still have a higher chance at one of the quarterbacks working out over a non-first rounder, which I think that's fair on the surface level. Hearing that, I'd agree with that. And then there was another one from Zim. The second or fourth, between the second and fourth round is the money rounds for receivers. I kind of agree with that for the most part. You kind of find the most talent in those areas when it comes to second and fourth rounders. I think the most egregious thing recently, Dre, I think we can agree on this one. The most egregious thing after seeing how everything played out was how DK Metcalf slipped because they were worried about, it was too much talk about his route running. so somehow he slips. But meanwhile, as soon as he gets up in Seattle, he's a playmaker from day one. And all of a sudden this route running talk went to shit. Like, it's completely gone. And then appointment only mentioned the draft class is deep for receivers. You got Rondell Moore, Elijah Moore, Tony, I think Bateman, Waddle, Kadarius Toney, Smith, Chase, and Rogers. I think Amari Rogers is the last one I'm thinking of. So, yeah, I mean, I agree. All depends on where you're gonna take them. But if you also think about it too, it's a deep class, but teams love receivers. So the guys that you mentioned, even though they may make it out of the first round, they'll probably be gone before the end of the third. So I guess it just depends on where Washington feels. I do think they need a receiver. I think we all agree that they still need receiver help as well. Right. And then lastly, again, I appreciate everybody tuning in, man, live on Twitch. The last thing we're going to close out with is the 4 decisions facing Washington football, the Washington football team heading into the NFL draft. I'm just going to do like a brief overview of the 4 decisions, Jay. And then I'll open it up to the chat, whoever wants to comment. But we want to know like which decisions are a priority for you, your number 1 and your number 2. This is stemming from a Washington Post article from Sam Fortier. I'll go ahead and just give the list of the 4. The first one being how to find the future at quarterback. Rivera mentioned that Sam Fortier writes, Rivera has said that he doesn't feel pressure to identify a franchise quarterback this year. But if Washington wants to, it has no easy options. He mentioned, being outbid for Matthew Stafford, and he mentioned that the top 3 picks are expected to be quarterbacks. So Washington being at 19 is likely out of range for the consensus top 5 prospects. And obviously Rivera is more than likely waiting to see how things play out in the draft to decide what he wants to do at the quarterback position. That being the first thing is quarterbacks. The second thing, he mentioned how to balance the new front office voices. Rivera spent the first stage of the all season remodeling the front office, and now he has the executives, the veteran executives that he wanted. He mentioned Mayhew, Marty Herney, Eric Stokes, who is the senior director of player personnel, Chris Polin, and obviously Tim Gribble. He needs to find the most effective ways to use them. He said that some dynamics have come into focus, and he talks about the differences between the people and what they bring to the table, and he mentions that everybody's on the same page. Okay, but clearly the second one is being able to balance the voices in the front office. The third thing is when to address the remaining positions of need. Washington still has several holes and thin spots on his roster, including linebacker that we talked about earlier, safety, left tackle, and tight end. The front office must choose whether to address them in the last waves of free agency or at the draft. The only addition that Washington made late in free agency last year was Ronald Darby, April 1st. And clearly we're at April 13. I think we're a week and a half away from the draft. So that's the third thing is just figuring out when to address the remaining positions of need. And then the last thing, what to do ahead of next year's problems. I briefly touched on this earlier when we talked about expiring contracts for 2022 and 2023. But roster building, Sam Fortier writes, is a game of whack-a-mole. So while Washington fills its needs for this year, it also must keep an eye on problems for next year. So these are players that he's mentioning: Jonathan Allen, Logan Thomas, Brandon Sheriff, and safety Landon Collins. Eventually, these contracts are going to expire, but Washington must decide what they're going to do long term with these players, and are they going to try and make a deal before the season, the 2021 season, or are they going to do a wait and see afterwards, which can be, obviously, as we know, pretty dangerous, especially with players not wanting to sign long term extensions mid season for whatever reason. So just to do a little brief overview, that was it. I'll go through the list again, which was how to find the future at quarterback, how to balance the new front office voices, when to address the remaining positions of need, and what to do ahead of next year's roster problems. For those who are in the chat talking, let me know if you have an opinion on this. But Dre, what are your top 2, or if you have just one, which is completely fine as well. What is your priority moving forward before this draft comes?
Well, as far as like the quarterback situation, it's not the easiest. It's no clear cut situation to say, oh, this is what you should have done. I mean, you even look back to they've acknowledged that they know they need a quarterback. We know that because they went after Matt Stafford, and probably would have got Matt Stafford if Matt Stafford said that he didn't want to just play for LA. I mean, which makes sense. You get it. I get why he wants to play in LA. It makes sense. It's a good roster. They have things there. But it's not easy. It's not as easy as because a lot of people think that because you need a quarterback and because you need this answer for the future, that you make any move forward. Like you're just gonna say, "I'm gonna settle. I'm gonna do this because we need a quarterback's in need. I'm gonna take this guy and just see what sticks." So as far I agree. I mean, I'm not gonna say I agree with Ron. As far as like the year or two, because I hope it's not that long. That we take to identify that guy for the position, but it's not as easy as a lot of fans think it is to just kind of feel that position, and go get that guy. So as far as priority wise goes, I would say that they know it's a high priority. We know as fans it's a high priority, but you don't want to settle. You don't want to just go get anything and say, all right, well, that didn't work. We're going to try again. Because then what happens the next year when, this situation didn't work out? You're kind of probably middle and pack again, unless you're just, authentically bad. Then you're going to go pick top 5 or whatever. But if you're not picking top 5, you have to make some big move for another guy. And the way the modern NFL is set up is that you have to find out what you have now. Like a lot of people don't want to wait till year 2, year 3 to see what they have in a guy, which I get, but it's like, what do you do? I mean, you can't you're not going to get a top 5 pick every year. Are you going to you're not going to have the assets every year if you keep trading up every year for a guy. So that's one of the things. And what was question 2?
So it was actually, that was it really. It was more so like your priority.
Yeah.
What was your top 2, or just if you had one priority, what was it? And you mentioned quarterback. So if you had another one, you can definitely talk about that as well.
Oh, I mean, as far as it's no specific priority, it's just team building from there. I mean, we all know quarterback is always the end all be all in the NFL as far as what you need position wise. But as far as everything else, it's team building. You just keep adding pieces. And I'm of the mindset that you don't just focus on positions, you focus on talent. A lot of people get so caught up in, oh, we need this. We need this linebacker, we need this free safety, or we need this outside receiver. I'm of the mindset of we need weapons, we need talent. So when you get a guy like Curtis Samuel, I'm not looking at Curtis Samuel saying, oh, we got an outside guy. I'm looking at Curtis Samuel saying we got a weapon. That's what we need. He's going to be an asset for the offense. You get your edge rushers, then linebacker. Of course, yes, we need linebacker. We need free safety. We need talent. That's the thing. You just keep building on what you have. I think the priority is you don't just get focused in positions, because that's how you end up with Chris Hortons and Kareem Moores. When you start looking at positions, you need talent. That's you get guys that may be falling out of place that he didn't land higher than he thought he was going to land in a draft or something. That's what you need.
So, couple comments. Zem, I don't know if this was I'm just reading this, so I don't know what subject you mentioned this on, but Zem mentioned he wouldn't be surprised if next year we'd be the betting lead for Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes last year. Anyway, we're likely going to be out of range for quarterbacks again next year. Packers will need to find an answer on Jordan Love. Disco mentioned his top 2 priorities based on the article that we just mentioned. He said his number 1 is finding a linebacker. Ron's quarterback of the defense, huge priority. And number 2 is layering the roster on day 2 and day 3. Don't think you're set on any position. Now, I do agree with that part, being set on any position. Clearly, when you're a team building, something that Dre mentioned, you're not necessarily, anybody can have their job taken. You're looking for best players. You're looking for the best players available. You're looking for people who's going to compete to be that number 1 guy on your team. Nobody's safe when you're developing a roster and you're trying to build an identity. For me, personally, Dre, quarterback is number 1 on that list. As you said, in football, that position is top tier for its obvious reasons. And me personally, I mentioned it last week. I'm in a spot where it's like, regardless of what they do, like I didn't have an answer last week, and I still don't have an answer in terms of like the move to make. But you cannot sit here, like, if you have a guy that you like, make the move to go get him. If they have a guy that they like, they can make the move to go get him. But at the same time, don't think because you signed Ryan Fitzpatrick that you're okay at the position. And I think that's the most dangerous thing when you're talking about Ryan Fitzpatrick and the current quarterback situation. As you approach the draft, is like, okay, we bought ourselves some time. All right, well, look, you can easily say we'll worry about the quarterback position next year. But what if next year comes and you're still out of range again for the quarterback position or the quarterback that you wanted? It becomes a little bit more difficult, and you're in the same predicament as this year. You're gonna have to give up a lot to bank on a guy that's a prospect. Um, and are you willing to go however which way up to make that move for a quarterback? And that's the spot that kind of bothers me, is because I don't know like how they're going to approach the quarterback position, but I think that's the number one priority. You cannot settle because you got Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think he is a solid placeholder. He is a guy who knows the quarterback position. He is a guy who you can count on, who knows the nuances, who can lead a guy, who can lead a team, and he can maneuver his way down the field. But I'm just not necessarily in that boat where just because you got him, you can just put it on the back burner. I think it still needs to be a priority. And I think from what we know, since given that we follow some reporters, we know that quarterback is still up there for them. But are they really going to pull the trigger on a guy that they like? I don't know, but that is my priority.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, and I get that. It's just like I said with the QB position, it's not like every other position in it. Well, a lot of positions in the NFL where you have multiple guys that can do the job. The QB position is 1 through 32 as far as NFL teams go. So, and not every 32 of those guys are great QBs. You probably got about 14, 15 of those guys that are good QBs. So it's hard to find the guys. It's not easy, but that's why I told you earlier when you asked me about like Trey Lance, if they were to move up and get a guy. And I felt like if they moved up for a guy, that means everyone is in cohesion for a guy. That means everyone is tied to this kid's development, whoever they were to move up for. Yeah. So I would not be mad. Like, while I say I don't love a Trey Lance, but I wouldn't be mad if they all moved up, because that would mean that Ron, Marty, Martin, and Scott were all on the same page with Trey Lance, and they all have investment in his development, which would mean that he would have a higher chance of succeeding here than a Dwayne Haskins, who didn't have the whole team in cohesion on his selection. So Dwayne Haskins came into a situation, he had his own faults. I mean, obviously I've talked about that plenty of times on Twitter, but he didn't have Jay Gruden, Jay Gruden didn't feel tied to Dwayne Haskins. Jay Gruden didn't have extra incentive to make sure that Dwayne Haskins succeeded. And Dwayne Haskins wasn't that type of guy that was going to say, all right, well, screw whatever they're doing, I'm still going to do me. Dwayne Haskins needed that extra push, and he wasn't going to get that from the regime that he was sitting in. But a guy like Trey Lance, let's say Trey Lance he needs motivation issues, which we hope we don't. I don't want to move up for a guy that needs to be motivated, because as the old late John Thompson once said, you can't motivate a corpse.
That is your boy.
Yes. So my thing is, but you move up for a guy like a Trey Lance or even Justin Fields, speaking of, then that everyone in this franchise that is in an important position to select someone, they're all in cohesion on the pick. And they're going to say, well, we need to make sure we do everything on our end for this kid to succeed. And if he doesn't, then it's on all of us. So they're tied to this kid's success. So they're going to make sure they see that his success is also viewed as their success. So that's where I'm at on that.
Sure. But yeah, one last comment before we go ahead and close it out. Zim mentioned, he stated, you're right. You can't settle on a decent for quarterback because you're afraid to go backwards. It leads you to constantly barely making the playoffs. The Marvin Lewis Bengals. I don't know why that felt so hard for me to say, but it took me a little minute to get that out. But yeah, I think if we don't have anything else, Dre, did you have anything that you wanted to mention before we close out, boss?
Oh, I'm all good, man.
Have you ever done quick little topic? Have you ever done juicing before? Like not the steroid juicing for anybody, but have you ever done juicing before, man? Like I'm in the midst. This is my first day of a 3-day juice. I can't eat shit for 3 days, bro. And the only thing I told my trainer today, the only thing I've been thinking about since I started was, bro, how am I about to break my fast when Friday gets here? Have you ever done juicing, bro?
No, and honestly, I would never do juicing. I've done too many other things that work to resort to not eating solid foods unless I broke my jaw or I'm going for a colonoscopy the next day. It's too many other things that work out here than to sit up here and start juicing and depriving my body of actual, physical things. Now, Rob is laughing at me. I see him talking about me being ex-vegan. But yes, I was a vegan, Rob, but I ate solid foods. I didn't juice when I was a vegan. I ate vegetables, I ate carbs. I pretended that stuff was meat, so that's fine. But no, I can't do the juicing thing because I just feel like, man, I would die before I do a juice.
Bro, I'm going through it. It's only a day. It's only a day, dog. Like,
well, what's your goal? What is your goal? That's the question.
That's actually a really good question though, Dre, because like I'm in the midst of like an 8-week challenge too, and the 8-week challenge is more so like it's a personal thing, but our trainer actually has like a reward for the best person like with the most change. I'm not really in it for that. My goal is to actually just decrease my body or change my body composition for the better, decrease my fat percentage, my body fat percentage, increase my muscle mass, the normal stuff. That's fine. But a part of juicing was just something that I wanted to try, just like I wanted to try like this 32-hour fast, which was hell, but I ended up doing it twice, which is crazy. But my goal with the juicing was more so to do a detox of sorts, like completely cleanse my body, but at the same time, it's supposed to help you lose a little bit of that body fat. So that's literally my goal, is more so to detox, but I know like it also helps like with the body fat. It's not supposed to be a lot. It's like 1 or 2%. And that's literally it. But that's really what it was. I don't have no particular goal, man. It's more so just for the challenge, the mental challenge to get my shit together. That's it, man. Nothing special.
I get you, man. But I would do keto before I do a juice because you can get much more lean and lose a lot more body fat than, and actually still eat and enjoy flavors.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Me,
without having to juice.
When Friday gets here, I am contemplating waking up. Whatever time I wake up, like 5. I wake up 5 o'clock on the weekdays. I'm contemplating. First thing I do is not walking Dakota. It's taking my ass to IHOP, bro. I'm about to get a big steak omelet. I'm about to get pancakes, 3 pancakes. I may say, hey, bro, throw 3 more on the side for me. I'll pay the extra $3, whatever it takes, bro. Give me 6 pancakes. I need to eat this shit, bro. I'm hungry, bro. I haven't eaten in 3 days.
Treat yourself, man. Stop depriving yourself. Go to IHOP, get you your big breakfast. You got all day on Saturday or whatever to work it off.
Yeah,
or Friday. You can work it off.
I'm thinking about it, bro. Trust me. And I got 2 more days of thinking about what the fuck I'm about to eat. So it's gonna be marvelous. It's gonna be fucking marvelous.
I got you.
Oh man, but hey Dre, appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you for hopping on this week, man. Obviously, I'm a check in with you, see what you up to next week, man. Tuesday, 8 o'clock, I guess. I guess that's what the plan is.
I'm here, man. That's my plan.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, man. I'm gonna holler at you, bro, man. Appreciate you. I'm gonna go ahead and talk, close it out, talk to chat right quick, man.
Take care, bro. Great show, man. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Yep. All right. That's that. Appreciate everybody that tuned in, Brad. Appreciate you, Disco. It was a good show, man. Appreciate you for contributing. Thank you for all the newcomers who hopped in the chat, man, to check it out, see what the podcast is about. For convenience measures, I will end up putting these things on Apple Podcasts. I'm new to that realm, so I'm gonna learn how to do this shit. All right, it may take a little while, but I'm gonna learn how to do this shit, right? But I will be publishing that. This will be on YouTube tomorrow, if not later tonight as well. And obviously, when this ends, the playback